obviously Codex and other similar tools like Claude Code, they're very technically impressive tools. They have a lot of uses. There are concerns about their use, especially in business, though. You have to allow these things deep access to your data, for example. So, what for our audience are the most important questions IT leaders should be asking any AI vendor before adopting a tool like Codex?
Yeah, I think what's very important is to like deploy these tools in a way where you have like some controls, right? And you have like some visibility into how developers are using them. And one thing, by the way, that we spend a lot of time on um, was the permissioning system and the sandboxing, like making sure the coding agent actually has the right guardrails in place. I remember a few weeks back when we were kind of due to ship the Windows app, actually, a lot of people were asking us, like, why have we not shipped the Windows app just yet? Well, the reason was is we spent a lot of time obsessing about sandboxing to make sure the right permission are in place, including on Windows, where there's fewer primitives at the OS layer. But it's also very important for leaders to have like visibility, into like how people use these tools. And I think like ultimately what really matters here is that IT leaders should think about, how do I enable more people to do their best work with tools like Codex? And for us, another thing that we want to make sure is that they have the right visibility, the right tokens, but also it has to plug in with your tools, right? It has to bring the right context. So, for instance, if you were having a very smart model, but it does not have access to your tools at the company, whether it's your CRM or your code base or some other like maybe like bug tracking systems, then it's not going to perform as well. And another thing that we care a lot about too, which I think IT leaders should consider, is how open source we are. In fact, the Codex CLI and what we call the Codex harness. So the Codex harness is actually the environment around Codex and how it can actually call and access these tools. That's also open source. And to us, I think that's very important too for IT leaders to be able to like see and introspect how these Codex harness function. So these are just a few ideas, but like basically enabling people to do more, making sure it has access to the right tools. And we're really at this inflection point now in terms of like enterprise adoption, right? And I think it's important for leaders to choose the right tools and empower their teams. I think what I find exciting myself is that everyone at the company now is a builder. It used to be just the engineers who were the builders, but now if you're a product manager, if you're a designer, or even if you're someone in go-to-market, you are a builder. You have access to these tools that make you one, which is very exciting.
So you're talking now about the rise of what has been called vibe coding.
Right. I think vibe coding was this like first, name that Andre Karpati coined. But I think this was this idea that like, well, from a simple way to express in natural language what I'm trying to accomplish, I'm able to create an application. But it actually goes beyond vibe coding when I think about builders, because when I think about builders, I also think about like, if you want to build that initial dashboard, or if you want to visualize some metrics, or if you have a data set that you want to manipulate, or maybe what you're building is also like a slide deck, something that leverages maybe Imagen, for instance, like you can build all sorts of things now with these tools.
You brought up visibility a moment ago, and I'm glad you talked about that, because one of the criticisms that I personally have heard from IT leaders is that AI tools are a black box. They're not transparent in their outputs. I'd love to know your response to that. If people have a concern about, they don't know how an AI tool has reached the conclusions it has.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of work happening on that. I think like we're trying to also like give as much visibility as we can in like the reasoning of the model and how it got to like a certain conclusion. I think what is also very interesting is not to think about these models just as a way to get to an output, but also as like a real teammate that can tackle problems different ways. Like for instance, one of the most exciting features of Codex, I think that's like still underrated, is like Codex code review. Like if you turn on code review, it doesn't matter if the code was written by Codex or written by like a human. Codex code review is quite fascinating at finding bugs and potential vulnerabilities that the best staff engineers might miss, because it's not just looking at the code in a static way. It's also looking at the environment, like running all of the tests in every possible combination of feature flags you might have in your application if it's quite complex and advanced. It's about like Codex security as well that we offer to make sure you find security bugs. So I think like there's also these different facets that I think we don't talk quite enough about with these tools, which is actually making your applications more robust, more bug free, and making sure you can also like empower your engineers to do their best work.